Tame your talent, your host, Brad J. Online training for anyone who wants to do some hosting, wants to do a little microphone work, whatever the case may be, from broadcasting to podcasting. I'm your dude. All right, here's what we're talking about today. Stats and stories. Everybody loves stats, and everybody loves a good story too as well. So having your stats and your stories, and once again, this goes to all announcing. Whether you're announcing at a conference, having some stats, having the numbers, having a story is always important. If you're announcing a competition, knowing the stats behind all the competitors and knowing the stories behind the competitors as well. It also will give people a reason to care when you do that. So stats and stories may not sound like a lot, but it is a whole lot. And at the end of this piece, I'm going to have you give me some crazy stats at the end. We're going to talk about that afterwards. All right, so here's the deal. How do you get good stats and stories? Well, do your homework, okay? Enough said on the stats. If you need stats and you want to know the stats on things, you got to do your homework. Write it down. And one of my favorite things to do for stats is bullet points. I am the hugest fan of bullet points. It drives my wife crazy. I always say, I want it in bullet points. I want bullet points here. I want a title, then I want bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. That's what I've always been about. But you know what? For me, as an announcer, it works. If I have the athlete's name right there, underneath I have bullet points. So I could say, he's a two-time X Games champion, a former Olympian, a two-time winner from the U.S. snowboard competition, from Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's George Johnson, or whatever the name is. That is what you do, all right? That is how you have your stats. You want to have the stats. And if you need the stats, you got to do the work to get the stats. And then have the stories. Like, okay, there's a guy who he broke his back or something like this, and he's coming back from injury. That's a story. That gives people a reason to care. And one of my favorite storytellers in the entire world is Vin Scully. The former announcer, or current announcer, but soon to be former announcer, whatever you want to call it. He's been part of the Dodger organization for so many years, and Vin Scully can tell a story and call a baseball game better than anyone in the entire world. And I'll tell you what, just look at some of the YouTube clips of what he does. Vin Scully, the king of storytelling. But by telling the stories, that makes people, that engages the people who are watching. They love being part of it. Now they know, wow, this guy broke his back. Wow, then he broke his ankle the next month. And then he rehabbed, and he came back and lost. And here he is today, now he wins. That's a story, all right? And that's also tying in the stats. People love stats. People love stories. And you know what? Honestly, I'm not the smartest tool in the tool shed, but I'll tell you what, when you have stats, you kind of look like you are the smartest guy out there, or at least kind of close to it. All right. It also makes people relate to you too as well. Having the stats and the stories, knowing the stats, knowing the history, knowing the stories about what got them to where they are. And I've said it before, it's like a vested interest. And I can think about one thing, a story kind of combined with a stat. I was announcing at X Games, Winter X Games, and it was the half pipe finals. It was the final event. And Shaun White, yes, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, is going to come down the pipe, and this is going to be his run. Well, Shaun comes down. He finishes his run off. So we're waiting for the score. And I'm like, he needs to beat this to take the championship. The score is coming in. They put the score in. The score comes in, and I see a 100, right? Talk about a stat, right? A 100, a perfect score from 0 to 100 is your scoring possibility, and that is a 100. So I don't know what to do. Is that a mistake? So I'm asking everybody, my director, hey, am I supposed to announce this? Hey, do I announce this? And everyone just left me on that island by myself, and I was sitting there going, what do I do? There's thousands of people here. The scores come in. People are waiting for the score. Do I just say it's 100? And I just blurt out, a perfect 100. And the place goes absolutely crazy. It's the only time in snowboarding history that a perfect 100 was given. And I was announcing it, and I didn't know whether to do it or not. But I'll tell you what, if I did not throw that 100 out there when I did, then it would not have had the payoff. It would not have had the impact. And the people that had the vested interest from all the stats earlier and all the stories that I've talked throughout the day would not have known what is going on. So by me saying it, That is what let it out, and that is when I talk about stats and stories. So when you're going to do your next event, and whether it be announcing a competition, whether it be announcing at a high school, maybe you're speaking to a career class, whatever the case may be, have some stats, have some stories. It'll tie your whole show in together. And that's what I mean by stats and stories.